All right. Welcome everybody on Zoom and YouTube. Just getting some things set up here. We'll get started in just a minute. If you're watching live on YouTube, I'm putting a Zoom link in the chat. We'd love to interface, interact with you when the episode's over. So gonna do that now. Welcome back to Increase. I'm Blake Anderson. This is episode 59. Appreciate everybody watching and listening wherever you are. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Pleasure to be talking about success and leadership with you every week. You know, in this show, Increase, we dig into the spiritual principles and learn how to apply them to get the natural results. And so we're going to continue laying out our framework of organizational leadership. I've said many times, if you're going to do anything great in this world, you're going to have a team. And so you're going to have to learn to be able to lead a team. You know, John C. Maxwell says in many of his books that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so hopefully with this framework, you learn how to be able to create influence, authority amongst your team members and the people that follow you, whether they're employees, whether they're vendors, so that you can do greater things. You know, a lot of the leadership reading that you do will be about how to lead people one-on-one, maybe how to lead yourself. We're talking about organizational leadership. We're saying what's possible when we get a team of people together to pursue something greater than ourselves. What's possible when we align all of our efforts. And that's really what organizational leadership is. You've got to think organizationally, not just about yourself, maybe not just about your direct report, but how does what I do and my team do fit into the greater organization and what we're trying to accomplish? How can I create alignment that leads to greater cooperation and therefore greater results? So we're going to move on down the way to step number 4. Go back and watch all the previous episodes to get caught up. But we'll do a quick review because, see, these are steps that work together like blocks in a foundation. You'll never stop doing step 1, 2, 3. They work together and they build upon each other. And so if you're going to lead anyone, especially if you're going to lead an organization, then you've got to be able to define success for organization. What does prospering look like to us? How do we know when we've accomplished something? Where are we going? And we've got to be able to line everybody on our team to get somewhere. Now, it's my contention that people are not going to follow you or commit to you for very long until they believe, or unless they believe, that where you're going will take them to where they're wanting to go in their life. And so if I'm an organizational leader, I've got to be able to cast a vision of what the company's up to, about what the team's goals are, but I've got to be able to help every team member fit their personal goals in there so that they can see if they advance the company's goal, then they'll achieve their own goals. Second would be our principles. So we've decided where we're going, but now we've got to agree on how we're going to get there. What are our principles and values? What's the expectation of how we're going to carry ourselves and how we're going to go about doing the things that we're responsible for? And we've got to be able to create alignment in those principles and values. And as we talked about, there's a difference between the ideal principle and what someone actually values. If you're wanting a team to work together, then we've got to find alignment there. And so if the goal of the organization is to be able to make money quickly from quick transactions, then an employee who values quality time with the customer may not be aligned principally to be able to advance the company's agenda. So we've got to help everyone see that we're aligned in what we believe in. And then third, we start to talk about positional clarity. Who's going to take responsibility? Who's going to be willing to be held accountable? And so we're mapping out the responsibilities, the tasks that each person on the team is going to sign up for. And there's got to be clarity there. We can't take the risk of an important task falling through the cracks and not getting done. You don't want to get to the deadline date only to find out that some of the most important things were never done. So you as an organizational leader, if you're going to create alignment, if you're going to grow in your influence, then you take responsibility to know that everybody's clear on what they're responsible for so that nothing's missing and we can accomplish something great. Now, you don't have to be the big boss, the CEO, to be an organizational leader. You don't have to be the person ultimately in charge of your team to provide that positional clarity. Anyone at any time can ask the right question and lead people into clarity. So my challenge to you, you're working on a team and something seems unclear, not just about what you're responsible for, but maybe what your other team members are responsible for, that you would stop and say, can I ask a question? I need some clarity here. I want to know how it fits in, and I want to maybe know how it sequences together. See, at that point, the person who's got the courage to step in and ask the right question that brings clarity to the team would be a leader in that standpoint, whether you have the authority or title or not. So then we're able to go to step 4, which is our process. So much of leadership is about a vision, it's about motivating people, but organizational leaders have to take responsibility for the process of their team and the process of their organization. You know, great things are not going to happen by chance. It will take intentionality for that to get done. I want to paint a picture for you of some scenarios that I've been involved with from either consulting or as an inside team member and see if this sounds familiar. I was asked to join a team once, and I got to the team and I was super excited because I was bought into the vision of the organization and what they were trying to accomplish. I had a deep regard and revere for the director of the organization, and everyone that I had met on the team before joining it, they were very talented, and I was impressed. And so I was honored to join their team. But when I got on the team, I found out very quickly that they had very poor results. And I was really kind of baffled at first, like, how come they don't hit their deadlines, and why is the finished product not as good? Because these are some incredibly talented people. When I see the individual work they do, it's great, but when you put them together, they're not functioning very well. Well, as I dug in further, what I realized was they didn't have a formal process. And so everyone was kind of working in their own fiefdom, but the things that they were doing didn't fit together. They didn't have alignment amongst themselves, amongst the team and the organization. And so therefore they didn't have the results that they had potential to be capable of. And so you can guess the first thing I did. I went back to the director and said, I'd love to help start with this initiative, but we really can't do anything effectively until we start nailing down some of these processes. Now, I'm honored to say that years later, I don't work for this organization anymore, but they still use a lot of the things that we put in place, and it revolutionized what they were able to do. And they made the next level from just a few random people working together in a mom and pop shop to becoming a true organization that could do greater things. You see, your process is so important, and we take it for granted. Most organizations, especially if they're small, they don't take the time to document and formalize their process. And so you have talented people that are working in an environment where they can't be successful. I heard a story of another organization was recruiting a salesperson, and this salesperson was killing it where they were working. They had great numbers. And so this younger organization thought, let's get this veteran salesperson to join our organization, same industry, because we need those results. this person who was killing it at that organization says, great, I love what you're up to. I like you as a person. And they joined the team. They quit a job they had been at for a decade to join this team as a salesperson. And it was a disaster. You're thinking, how could that be? This person had great results. The director, the CEO brought them in, but they failed to give this seasoned sales professional a process to execute. You see, what this younger team leader didn't understand was the reason this person was so successful was because they worked for a larger corporation with a very defined process. Now, I don't want to diminish this salesperson. I knew them personally. I cared about them. I liked them. But they were not the person that could create the process. They were the implementer who could execute to scale. And that's what this younger company didn't understand is they didn't provide this person with the process, and it was a disaster. 6 months later, they had to part ways. The guy got fired, and he had moved out of state for the job because there wasn't a process for them to operate. Now, whose responsibility is that? Well, ultimately, what we have to understand is it's the leader's responsibility to create and define and refine the process of the organization. But every single one of you can be a leader, and everyone can participate in this process. Yes, if you have a boss, it's ultimately their responsibility to give you a process. But if you want to be successful and you join a team that doesn't have one, then you will raise your hand. You will be the one that confronts the lack of clarity, says we need to formalize a process so that I can be successful here. You will do everyone a favor when you formalize that process. So I've kind of been alluding to the major steps necessary for step number 4. And step number 1, when you're creating a team or you're joining a team, number 1 is you're going to have to create the process. So we're talking about documenting and defining the process. You know, there's a classic business book called The E-Myth, and Michael Gerber, talking about building businesses, really uses McDonald's as a model. Now, whether you love a McDonald's burger or not, it's safe to say that whether I go to a McDonald's in Wake Forest, North Carolina, where I live, or London, England, then everything will be the same. There's a great movie came out about Ray Kroc called The Founder, and it really showed the inside of his mind and how he took a great model, standardized it to take it to scale. And so what Gerber was saying in The E-Myth, with your business, you've got to create a process that's repeatable, that you do it the exact same way every time, that there is clarity with everyone on the team about how we do things and what order we do things. So you've got to create that process, and you need to document it and formalize it. So there is an exercise that I like to do when I join new teams to try to create a process. I've joined many new teams where it wasn't very well documented, and I call it the life cycle. And simply put, and when I want to create a life cycle of the work that I'm doing, a life cycle of a transaction for the company, a life cycle of a project for a team. And so on that life cycle, I literally am going to map out every single task that has to be done in the order that it has to be done in to get to the finish line, to get to a sale of a project. It's amazing how illuminating that can be. We often take for granted all the little things that have to be done for a successful project to happen. And so I like doing the life cycle. Another thing that we use in our team is the project management framework. You can go back to some other episodes in Increase to learn about the project management framework, but it's a 7-step process that tells you how to lay out a project to take it to success. But what I'm saying is you got to first create it, and you need to document it, and you need to review it with everyone on the team. Everyone needs to be crystal clear about what needs to be done and how we do it. After you've documented it, oftentimes part of your process will be a software. Are we using Google Docs? Are we using email? We're going to use Slack. We use Buildertrend Project Management in our real estate and construction company. And everybody is on it and we're designing it. So first you need to lay it out, and then you need to get crystal clear on who's doing what all along the way. And then we're going to be clear about which software we're going to use to fulfill the process and the transaction. So after we create this process, the second thing that we've got to do as team leaders is we have to create alignment. And this is an ongoing leadership task. And so I want to draw a diagram as you think about alignment, because an organization has got many processes going on, right? And if they're not aligned, then likely they won't be working together. And so if you want to do anything significant, we've got to align all the processes so that they are pulling in the same direction. And I think about the alignment as gears, okay? And so the first process you have to think about is your personal process. This is you. Your personal process. What are you responsible for? What are the tasks along the life cycle that you have to do? And then your personal process has got to fit within a team. And that team has got a process that oftentimes that life cycle defines. But most of the time, we're talking about organizations that have multiple teams. And so even that team is a part of a greater organization. And they work together like gears. All of these gears must fit together so that they turn together. One thing to be looking for, if you experience something stalling out, you get results that you didn't anticipate, things aren't going the way that you planned, most likely you've got a process problem and you've got gears that aren't clicking together. So let me ask you, when things aren't going well, do we have a problem with the organizational process? Is it the team's process or is it the individual process? Yes. Any malfunction in any one of these gears has the ability to affect everything else. So that's why this is so important that we are clear about what's my personal process. How do I do things? What time am I going to start my day? When are my deliverables due? When am I going to be communicating with my team? When am I going to close my computer for the night? I've got to have a personal process. How does that fit with everybody on my team? If I've got a remote team member who works in another time zone like I do, is there enough overlap in our schedule that we can still work together? Is there an ideal time that we need to discuss important things? Or can we just email and work remotely through our software? How does that process together? And then our team, is our team's process, does it fit with the organizational goals? The deadline I have for my team, how does that fit with what the organization is trying to accomplish? You see, they all work together. And to complicate things, every organization has multiple teams with gears. And any one of these teams, if they get off track, has the ability to slow down the overall organization, which has the ability to slow down your team. And each one of those teams is filled with individual people who have to fit into it. And at any time, if someone isn't doing their role, drops the ball, there's not clarity, they have the ability to slow down the team, which could affect you as a team member, as a team leader, which could affect your organization. I want you to think about the last time someone on your team went on vacation. How did that affect you? Well, if they took their laptop to the beach, it may not have affected you at all. But if you ever had someone that traveled internationally, then it has the ability to slow a lot of things down. So this is some fundamental understanding. But you'd be amazed at how many people don't see themselves as a leader, so they don't feel it's their responsibility to manage these details. And they're not thinking about how they fit in with their team, how they affect their team members, and where the team fits in to the organizational org chart and life cycle. So if you're going to be an organizational leader, this alignment has got to be one of your main focuses. The automotive industry, especially Toyota, coined a term years ago called continuous improvement. And continuous improvement is this belief that we have to always look to improve. In our organization, I tell everybody that joins that we have worked really hard on our process, but we chiseled none of it in stone. It is all up for grabs, and we're not territorial or prideful about anything we've done. At any point in time, we find a way to improve or make something done happen faster with a greater quality than we are going to change it, because we're continuously proving. We are working on the clock to find efficiencies, and that's what organizational leaders do. They take on the responsibility to look for things that aren't working together, to create efficiencies and a greater level of alignment that leads to cooperation that makes the next level of results possible. Henry Ford says, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Hope that sinks in. I hope that you're determined to take your organization to another place and see that you are empowered to be a leader that creates alignment through the processes of your job, of your team, and of your organization. And you, no matter where you find yourself on the org chart, have the ability to make an impact that takes things to another level. Appreciate you joining me for another episode of Increase, wherever you are, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Hit like, subscribe, follow, send me a comment. Love to know how this impacts you. Love to know how I can help. See you next time for another episode of Increase. If you're watching live on YouTube, check the chat. There is a link to Zoom. Have some folks over here that we're going to talk about this concept a little bit when we cut the feed. So join me over here on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, hang tight for a second while I get some things transferred over and set up.